Hey everybody, good morning. Yes, it's me, Robert Phoenix. 8:47, not too bad. Always putting the final touches of the show together, up all the way up to the last minute, so I can get you the freshest content, the most recent ripples across the waves of the alternative media scape. And we're here today. Welcome to the show. Welcome. How is everybody? A lot to cover today. A lot to cover. Because there's really nothing going on in the world, is there? Let's see what we got here. Hey everybody, good morning. Yes, it's me, Robert Phoenix. Oh, look who's here. Look who's here when the jazz man testifies. When the jazz man testifies. Jazz man. Oh, jazz man. Great song by Carole King. I was not a huge Carole King fan, but Jazz Man is a good one. All right, who do we have in chat? We got Jennifer, we got Unka. What's going on? JMP Love. Kurt Judkins. Hey, Kurt, nice to see you. 1-0 Dragon. There's Judy, and Ian, and Beth, and Amanda, and Charles. What's going on, Charles? Tamara Garth. Hi, Tamara. Hey, Ron Smith. Right on, Ron. Nice to see you here. Here's Stephen. Cool. I actually got a notification. Beautiful. Excellent. You know what I'm going to do right now, just in case some of you folks did not get the notification over on Facebook. I'm going there right now to notify some peoples. Give me a second. Yes, I'm telling you, I'm going to go notify them. I'm taking your advice, Jasper. Jasper was giving me some production advice about what I should be doing. Let's see what we have here. Oh, how funny. How funny. I put this post on Facebook 7 years ago, and I should show this to you guys. Hold on, I'm going to show this to you guys. This is good. This is some good content. I'll show you how much the world has changed in 7 years. There's my Facebook page right there. So I put this on Facebook 7 years ago. Take back the power. Revolution. Okay, you see how they highlighted the O, right? So who was in office 7 years ago? Obama. Oh, the big O. And look at this, right? Look at this. Look at the lineup there. Well, let's see. What do we got? We got white guy. Of course, there's the redhead. That hasn't changed. There's the redhead. Let's see. We got Whitey. That's interesting, isn't it? Now that wouldn't be the graphic they'd be shown today. Nope. Not today. Let me just type this in there. That'd be a very different revolution. Am I right? Okay. Let me throw this in there. This is my attempt to make sure that the algorithms are how do I say this? Trained. We have to entrain the algorithms. I'm training the algorithms right now. Isn't it wonderful that I'm just surrounded by the lush beauty of spring? Look how fertile that is. Glistening droplets of water like jewels upon emerald blades. All right. So where do we want to go today? All right. So let me get into a little bit of a kind of a monologue space here, which I tend to do at the beginning. I got off the phone with my mother this morning. And, I call her every day just to check in on her, make sure she's doing okay. And so funny, man. My mother is about as far away from being a disruptor as possible. My father was a bit of a disruptor, I will say that. But my mother is not a disruptor. She's, following the rules and staying home. And I caught her this morning getting just, I got up before she did. And normally she's kind of up around the same time I am, but you know, today she was sleeping in. So I talked with her, and she told me that she'd signed up for Instacart with Sprouts because the word is out in the senior community that Sprouts has the goods. So she put an Instacart order in with Sprouts, and Instacart is probably doing a hell of a business right now. Hell of a business. Isn't that right, Jasper? Isn't that right? I wonder if they have a business called Instacat. Instacat. Yeah, there's Jasper. The man. Wow. Anyway, I talked to her, and I have to say I was concerned. I was concerned about her. And the reason that that I'm concerned is that, and I'm concerned not just for her, but for many seniors across this country and across the world who are now being kind of locked in to their apartments and isolated, like they're in some kind of, shall we say, camp of some sort. You know, and I think that this is absolutely and utterly terrible. It's terrible. I'll tell you why. Number one, if you're a senior, and I'm going to go, you know, 75 and over, and my mother's in her 80s. If you're a senior and you're alive and you're in, you know, relatively good health, which she is, there's a reason why that's probably taking place, besides good genetics. It's because certain people have an active mindset, that they stay active. My mother stays very active with her church. She's very involved with her church. She has her social circle, her friends. She's always doing, she's always reading books with her tablet. She's always kind of doing, like, you know, little puzzles and stuff like that. And she's not a gym member. She doesn't do that, but she likes to go out and about. She's very independent. She likes to use her car, travel, go places by herself, lots of social functions. And this is, I think, really an important part of the quote unquote senior life, in that they thrive on stimulation. And now guess what? They don't have any real stimulation. They just don't. You know, they're basically holed up and boarded up and walled in their 4x4 isolation chambers. And I'm concerned about the seniors. I'm concerned that they're cut off from their families. I'm concerned that they're cut off from their grandchildren. I was listening to who was that guy? It was either this guy that was, you know, one of these white coat potentates on Fox, or it might have been John Garamendi, this congressman from California. I forget who it was, but somebody wrote in. I think it was somebody from the CDC or one of these, you know, white coat popes. And they said, you know, we have plans to visit our grandchildren, blah, 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 laid it all out. Should we go through with our plans, or should we cancel our plans? And then, of course, chime in, well, you know, I was supposed to visit my grandchildren as well. And, you know, unfortunately, we've had to delay and postpone this. We had to delay and postpone this. And my advice to you would be to do the same. So now we're cutting our seniors off from all these different sources that feed them. We're cutting them off from their activity level. Other seniors, by the way, that they hang out with, recreate with, right? They're cut off from that as well. So they're cut off from that, those relationships, those social connections. They're cut off from their group connections, i.e. church or the Rotary or pickleball or whatever it is that they do. They're cut off from that. Now they're cut off from their children and their grandchildren. And I think that this, and especially when we get into springtime, and the weather's starting to change now. And as we get into springtime and there's more sun and more vitamin D, and more of a contrast with their inner state and their outer, in the outer state. I think there's going to be a rise of depression, real depression, and the things that kept them alive and kept them going are removed from their life. What do they have to live for? You know, and a depressed mind creates depressed immunity. So now they're open to whatever other viruses or germs or contagion, whatever's out there. They're going to be more open and susceptible to it because their joie de vivre, right? Their lust for life, you know, the prana that flows through them with their various activities, the things that keep them interested, curious, happy, and alive have been removed from them. It's a very, very, I think, important dialogue that is not taking place. It's not taking place. You know, how long can people live without one another? How long can they continue to go on and have a 6-foot distance rule? Right. I was at the market yesterday. I try to go to the market now about once a day because you know, I try to stay up on my kind of daily diet thing. You know, the long-term stuff. You know, let's just say that I'm okay. Okay. But I don't want to go deep into long-term yet. So I am going to the store because I actually get to go out and I get to look at people. I'm seeing hands, I'm seeing gloves, I'm seeing masks now. So it's it's medical on parade, right? Now, I think that that this is a big issue. It's a really big issue, and nobody's really talking about it. Nobody's really talking about it. Now, the reason why they're obviously targeting seniors and elders is because there does seem to be a morbidity rate with this, whatever this thing is that's floating around, and whatever this thing is, people have had it. They've had it. People have gotten super, super sick. I was incredibly sick in November. It took me over 2 weeks to get over it. Okay, but I got over it. And, you know, once I got over it, I was good to go. Right. So what's going to happen with these people? How are they going to rebound, respond? Are they going to be able to eventually kind of re-enter society, or are they targeted now? I mean, are the senior and elder group a targeted group now? When is it going to be safe for them to come back out? Again, the morbidity rate seems to be higher with the superbug or the super virus, or whatever we want to call this thing. So theoretically, there's probably some concern on some level, right? Some concern on some level. And I'm going to say something here that might sound a bit cold-hearted, even in light of what I just shared with you, because I do believe that these people cannot be cut off from the human sustenance that's been a part of their lives and kept them going, you know, through their later years. And I firmly believe that, and I support that. On the other hand, I'm going to say this, which is probably maybe a little politically incorrect, right? Perhaps a little politically incorrect. But there are times in nature, and I'm going to give you an example. Okay, I'm going to give you an example. There's a really, really good movie called Never Cry Wolf. If you haven't seen Never Cry Wolf, I highly recommend it. The director was a guy by the name of Carroll Ballard, very talented director. I think Carroll Ballard's greatest claim to fame was The Black Stallion. I know a lot of you are familiar with that movie. But Never Cry Wolf is the story of Farley Mowat, who was apparently he was a real asshole, and like in real life. Isn't that the way these things go? You know, they do movies about people and it's great stories, and apparently most of them are just dicks, right? So that aside, it's still a great movie, and I highly recommend it. So Farley Mowat is played by this guy, Charles Martin Smith, who was one of the sons on My Three Sons. He was the one that was adopted because his parents left him behind, which is a bizarre kind of storyline in My Three Sons. Anyway, Charles Martin Smith was also in American Graffiti. So he plays Farley Mowat, and he gets dropped in the tundra of BC, right? Canada, way up there, because he's a Canadian. He's working for the Canadian government, and he's trying to track the depopulation of the caribou. So there's an issue there with the caribou. They're dying off. Like, well, why? You know, something's going on there. And he's noticing that there are a lot of wolves that are predating the caribou. And it's a really interesting story. And in order for him to kind of get into sort of the mindset of the wolf, he begins to do things that the wolf would do. And apparently the wolves had a very large appetite for mice, field mice. So what he does is he decides to catch mice and eat mice and put himself into the mindset of the wolf. And along the way, he meets a couple of Inuit guys, which are interesting to say the least. And there's a guy there named Utek. And he would do something. This guy, Farley Mowat character, would do something. And there was this other guy named Mike, who was his translator. And then Utek would say a bunch of stuff, and then Mike would say to him, and the Mowat character said, well, what does he say? He says, Utek says, good idea. Utek says, good idea. So he becomes friends. Like, this is, like, Never Cry Wolf is a pretty good, Dances with Wolves, pretty good wolf movie. Never Cry Wolf is better, in my opinion. And I'm a big wolf guy. I love wolves. So eventually what happens is that he finds that the wolves are going after the caribou because he found that the caribou have been infested with some kind of parasite, like the herd got too big. And then the wolves were taking out, he figured this out, the lame and the sick and some of the young that probably had a genetic predisposition to carry the parasite. So the wolves were playing their role in the management of nature in that environment. And so he had his answer. This is why there was a large sort of cycle of predation and a large drop off in the caribou population. And this is what happens in nature. There are times when the herd gets too big. There are times when things happen, right? Just kind of this version of natural selection. And then who survives? It's going to be the fit, or the people that are going to have, or the entities of the best immunity, or whatever that thing is, right? So the reason I'm bringing this up is because one of the big things now is I'm going to get into the bicameral and bipartisan breakdown of what's happening. And you've got to pay attention to this. You've got to pay attention to this because something significant is taking place, really significant, all right? Very, very significant. So coronavirus has become the new virtue signal. What do I mean by that? If now all of a sudden we're not throwing everything in the kitchen sink at coronavirus, okay? If we're not throwing everything at it, like this is like the new AIDS pandemic. And I want to talk about that a little bit too. I've got a lot to share. So if I don't get back to the AIDS pandemic, Chatlandia, remind me, because I'll go back in there, because there's a very interesting and very important piece around this that I discovered last night with about an 18-minute amazing poly video, okay, which is something you should check it out. And it has to do with Deborah Bricks and guess what? The Ukraine, all right? So there's a lot going on here. This is big shit, really big shit. So the new virtue signal, if you're not throwing, is if we just lose one life due to coronavirus, the world is going to collapse, and that's on you, right? This is what happens in nature, okay? You know, the unfit and the lame and the immunosuppressed or whatever. Nature does not have any sentimentality, okay? A lot of times we like to anthropomorphize nature and turn it into a Disney film. Sometimes nature is raw and naked and aggressive and fucking merciless, okay? People don't understand that. And we become so convinced of our own power and our power to control the environment or to control the outcome of things. And it is one of the highest sort of examples and points of hubris, that we place ourselves above nature. And that's really dangerous, really, really dangerous, because, you know, we think of nature as this benign thing and we have to court it and take care of it and all these. And yeah, that's true. It's really good to have a symbiotic relationship with nature and a positive one. But we can't control nature. At some point, nature flips, right? There's going to be some kind of a reset, or there's going to be some kind of a rebalancing of things. And nature does it all the time within its own ecospheres and various systems. So to you know, use that metaphor, keep it moving forward, right? That this idea that now all of a sudden, oh, by the way, where's global warming? You know, where has global warming gone? If I had a cricket sound effect, I'd punch it right now. At least it'd be natural. That's what I do. I hit that cricket. We're not talking about global. Oh, by the way, guess who has coronavirus? She's been quarantined. Greta Thunberg. Yeah, that's right. She's been quarantined. Oh, and Prince Charles has. I mean, I'm going to get into the celebrity coronavirus shit. Clearly, this is they're in on the game. It's like, okay, here's what you're going to do. You're a member of the club. Here's what you're going to do. You're going to sell this. You're going to sell coronavirus, without a doubt. Without a doubt. Here, let me show you a picture about what I'm talking about. Let me show you a picture. I was at the market. You know, they get you. The checkout at the market is a massive kind of programming installation, right? What happens when you're at the checkout at the market? You're in a certain state of mind, right? You're kind of lulled. It's kind of a lull. You walk up there. Nobody's really talking to each other. You're kind of in this, you know, this kind of light trance-like state. And then what's to your right? The magazines with the headlines. Well, we want you to buy a magazine, but we also want you to see the headlines. So let me show you the latest. The latest copy of In Touch, another one of these countless celebrity rags. Here we go. Hollywood battles corona virus. Idris Elba fighting for his life. Justin Bieber, secret trip to clinic. Oh yeah, what's really going on with these people? That's what I'd like to know. Angelina Jolie fears for her kids. Now, she's not sick. That doesn't even look like her. She has a certain kind of vampiric quality there, doesn't she? Very pale, the red lips. $20 billion in losses, Mission Impossible, James Bond, NCIS on hold. Oh, look at that. 9/11 emergency. Oh, isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? 9/11 emergency. Coronavirus. Pregnant Katie collapses. Is Katy Perry pregnant now? Oh, and then here we go. Another baby story. Chip and Joanna, new baby, new show. See how they're selling this though? These are the faces of the coronavirus. Anyway, this is the new virtue signal. This is the cry, the human cry of the left and the progressives that we have to do everything to stop this. Everything. We have to throw everything out because if one life is lost, if just one life is lost. Hold on a second. Emily, you should be on my show. She's texting me. Let me just text her back. Okay. One life, but what they don't understand, right, in the grand scheme of things, is that nature has a way of correcting itself. And I'm not saying that this coronavirus or whatever this thing is a byproduct of nature. Oh, far from it. Far from it. However, that said, it will impact. Emily's listening. I can't comment on that question right now. We'll talk about it later. Anyway, this is what happens. People don't understand that. There's such hubris. I mean, there are corrections at times. And sometimes the corrections are valid and real, especially in nature, and sometimes they are artificially simulated, and man-made. Hello, Spanish flu pandemic, 1918, 1919, 1920. But it's a new virtue signal. And again, global warming has now taken a back seat. Nobody's talking about global warming now, are they? I'm surprised that they haven't linked global warming to corona. I'm surprised that hasn't happened yet. I'm sure somebody out there will link it to, but there's starting to be some pushback on both sides of the ledger sheet. So one of the things that came across my screen. Oh, before I go on to that, I got to show you this. You got to see this shit. This is like way bizarre. Way bizarre. You got to see this. I'm gonna play this for you. I wonder if it's still up. It was as of last night. Let's see what happens. All right, you got to see this. Let me get this a bit smaller. All right. So, still on the celebrity tip, this is Rita Wilson. Okay. Some of you guys have seen this. If you haven't seen this, check this out. Can the world get any more weird? I'm sure it can. Just hold on a second. You'll hold on a few weeks. You'll find out. Watch this. Check this out.
Hi guys, it's me, and I just wanted to tell you something. I am going to give you my phone number, and you can text me, and I'm going to text you back. That way I can let you know what I'm up to and where I'm going to be, and maybe tell you some things that are happening before they happen. So feel free to text me to my cell phone number. It is me. I will get it to you, and I will get back to you in due time, because I'm going to be probably spending a lot of time on text. Anyways, the number to text me on is 310-299-9260. 310-299-9260. Text you soon. Bye.
Bye. Text you soon. What the fuck is that about? I mean, how bizarre is that? I guess it can get even more weird than that. But I don't know. And where's Tom, by the way? Tom seems to be the poster boy for Corona. The whole Hanks family, Chet Hanks, Tom Hanks, Rita Wilson. whole thing's utterly bizarre. So I wanted to talk about what's happening with the governors of America, which is getting really, 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 really disturbing. Very disturbing. There's an open range warfare now against Trump and the Trump administration. So let me show you guys this. I'm sure you guys you're all very hip. You're all hip. You're hip to the trick. So let me find a better story here. One second. Because Nevada has always been a paragon of clean government. Nevada's Democratic governor issues emergency order barring use of anti-malaria drugs for coronavirus patients. Steve Sisolak. Look at that guy. Nevada's governor, Steve Sisolak, Democrat, on Tuesday issued an emergency order barring the use of anti-malaria drugs, such as chloroquine, for coronavirus patients. Last week, Sisolak shut down casinos and only kept open essential businesses like grocery stores and healthcare facilities. In addition to the barring the use of chloroquine for coronavirus patients on Tuesday, Nevada's governor also banned social gatherings of more than 10 people. So there we go. There's the AP story right there. Sisolak signed an emergency order earlier Tuesday, barring the use of anti-malaria drugs for someone who has the coronavirus. Order restricting chloroquine and hydroxychloroquine came after President Donald Trump touted the medication as a treatment falsely stated the Food and Drug Administration. So did he falsely state that? Anyone who violates the order will be charged with at least a misdemeanor crime. It remains in place until April 16th after Easter. President Trump on Saturday expressed optimism about two drugs that he said could be one of the biggest game changers in medicine. The 52-year-old coronavirus victim recently said he expected to die, but hydroxychloroquine saved his life. You know the story. To me, there was no doubt in my mind I wouldn't make it until morning, Giardinieri said. So to me, the drug saved my life. I just want everyone to know there's an option. You just don't just have to sit there and hydrate. There's a medicine that's working. But now coronavirus patients from Nevada will not have access to these anti-malaria drugs because the governor said so. Michigan is the latest state to ban and bar the use of chloroquine for treatment of coronavirus. So now we have open warfare with the governors of the United States and the president of the United States. All right, so what can Trump do about this? So Trump has he's kind of put the foot off the accelerator on the Fed level, okay? On the Fed level. And he said, well, we'll let the states take care of this because some states aren't affected and some states are. All right? That's his quote. So he's gotten out of the way, which in some ways I appreciate. But all these states and all these governors have just said, well, fuck you. We're just going to run our own program here. And our program is going to look like the program that's being rolled out everywhere across the planet. And now they're being openly aggressive and saying, hey, you know, this is what they're doing to Trump right there. They're like, well, fuck you. Fuck you and your chloroquine. We're going to stick it to you right there, right? And, you know, Trump is a lot of things. And there are other things he's not, both positive and negative. But one thing he is that dude has some pride. And he doesn't like people fucking with him. He just doesn't. So, you know, he's taking notes, but he's got to do something more than take notes. They've just passed the stimulus package. I haven't gotten into the gritty details right now because they just passed it, and I was getting ready for the show today, so I couldn't really dive into it. But I'm sure it's a variation of what I read to you yesterday, and maybe some of the more egregious stuff was taken out, and they left in some other stuff that is borderline egregious, which they always do. Right? They'll just throw shit in that makes your toes curl, and then they just dial it back. You know, they get right to that edge. I'm like, oh, well, at least they didn't have that in there. Yeah, but they had this. Well, I guess there's a trade-off. You know, we'll take this over that, right? I mean, this is how the game works, always how it works. They ask for more than what they want to get, and they get what they really want to get because they know what they, you know, report that they want, they won't get. And they put it in there just because it gets attention and it gets people all riled up and lathered up, but they're really going down about 2 levels to get to those line items that they really want. Those are the ones that seem to be somewhat more easy, right? So Trump has got to do one of 2 things. He has either got to cut off state funding, which could be quite damaging, especially in the election, right? The election. Are we going to have an election? And I've been talking about this now for over a year. That in 2020, I saw that there was a chance we probably wouldn't have an election. I mean, they've canceled everything. Why should the election be any different? Oh, they'll have an election, I'm sure. See, that's what the Dems will press for. Like, that's the one thing they'll want. You cancel the shit out of everything else. But no, we're going to have an election. We just won't be able to vote in person. They won't be able to vote in person. Now the gamesmanship is really going to come into play. Now the gamesmanship is really going to come into play because they may force Trump to actually cancel the election. They may force him to do that. And he might have to just throw down, say, state of emergency, martial law, and the election is canceled. And then let's see what they do after that. Now that's, to me, that's like a hardcore radiation and chemotherapy treatment on a patient that's really not that sick. And you may kill the patient in order to, kill whatever kind of radical spread or semi-radical spread of a body whose immune system is in overdrive, right? So, we're in really tricky territory now, very tricky territory. Because if Trump wants to get the hydroxychloroquine, or chloroquine passed, he's going to have to basically become an emperor. And people are not going to like it. They're just not going to like it. Now, he's stated unequivocally that he wants to have everything up and running in 2.5 weeks. And there's resistance to that. And where is the resistance coming from? It's coming from, again, I hate to use these kind of bicameralizations and, these camps, the left and the right. But, I mean, let's be clear. There's vocal dissent on one side and not so vocal dissent on the other side. And then there's kind of the cacophony in the middle. The shouting across the demarcation, the Maginot line of political awareness and political. So the left and the progressives, they don't want people to go back there. Why? Because just one life. Just one life. One life lost. This is an affront to all humanity. We're not gods in that sense. People die, okay? They die. That's what happens, they die. And, false piety, fake and phony-ass compassion will never, ever, ever translate into respirating a system that is meant at times to experience some form of collapse or entropic decline or the thinning out of whatever needs to take place. Can't, won't. And all the hand wringing and hand washing in the world won't save it. Here, good story. you may be able to kind of, you know, band-aid it or jerry-rig it, especially in a pandemic where the statistics are insanely low with any real cases. And I mean any real cases. There's not one case of coronavirus in this town. Not one. And we're basically on lockdown. Kerrville, I went to Kerrville yesterday, just south of here, and I had my blood drawn. Yeah, I went to one of those blood places. Not because of anything wrong with it. Just taking care of my body, right? Getting my cortisol levels checked out and all that stuff. So I asked the one of the techs there, and I said, any cases of coronavirus at Kerrville? Nope. So we've got a town that's south of me, population about 20,000 people. This town, 10,000, it's 30,000 people. Not one case, and both cities now are on virtual lockdown. Okay? But it's the virtue signal that is really the most damning around all of this. And you know, where's the virtue signal in places or areas where people are, you know, the one I tell you, man, it's like there's never ever any hue and cry about Gaza or Palestine, where people are just like they've been going through this shit, you know, since the 50s and the 60s. And nobody's ever really said, "Oh my God, these poor people." You know? What about what's happening with them? You know, in every, like, what is it, 2.5 years, they're bombed back to their 1940 status. You know, they have, you know, it takes them hours and hours and hours to get to a clinic. They have to go through checkpoint after checkpoint after checkpoint. Nobody ever talks about this. Where's the virtue signal for those people? Never there. All right. So Trump's got his hands full. You know, they asked Fauci if they're at odds. Of course, Fauci says, no, you know they are. They're totally at odds. You know, one of the things that Fauci's a Capricorn. And Trump has all those planets in Cancer. Saturn in Cancer, Venus in Cancer, Mercury in Cancer. So they're not really like fit in some ways. They're not a good fit. They're just not. They're not a good fit. Not only that, but Fauci has his Mercury at 25 Sagittarius, conjunct the galactic center. And that's opposing Trump's sun in Uranus. So Fauci's point of view, you know, his vocal, his mental, intellectual, rational, not manifestation, dissertation, reasonable dissertation, is opposed to Trump, the totality of Trump's being. It's interesting. What was also interesting about that last meeting was the absence of Mike Pence. And I can't stand Mike Pence. I've never liked Mike Pence. Does that guy ever modulate his voice over, what is it, like 4 dB or whatever that is? It's like, there's no modulation. You think Mike Pence has ever told a joke in his life? At least I think Mike Pompeo's probably told a dirty joke between the two minds. Okay, let me get into a few other things here. There's still a lot to cover today. One of the things that I've been thinking about with the coronavirus, of course, the topic du jour, is the fact that there are a large number of service workers that are in the mix. So I know personally 2 people that are in the mix, meaning that they have jobs. One is a grocery worker. A lot of you may know her, my good friend Jolie Evans in Colorado, who is working at Kroger's, one of these high-end grocery stores. So she's there, she's working, and guess what? She got her papers. She has her papers. And another friend, good friend, not going to mention her name, who is in Oregon, and she does delivery routes, and guess what? She's got her driving papers from DHS. from home security. Right? So we have workers now. We have food deliverers. We have the grocery people. We have food deliverers, delivery people in general. We have the first responders. We have nurses. We have some utility people that are kind of out there. The people who work for the cable company. We're talking, basic, foundational, fundamental, frontline people involved in the actual running of the system as the system has ground to a screeching halt. And now what are we doing now? How are these people being viewed? They're being viewed as heroic, right? It's like you're in the grocery line, you're in the grocery store and you're watching these poor bastards, fill the shelves as fast as they possibly can, and you want to blurt out, thank you for your service. Right? You're the new heroes. Thank you for your service. I mean, you're a grocery store. But they're fulfilling a function. But these are the people now that are being elevated. They're being elevated. And I'm not sure it's a bad thing. It's a very Cancerian thing. But let me show you something that you might find interesting. So during the Bolshevik Revolution, one of the things that was very popular and common was to elevate the proletariat, so that the proletariat felt as though they were an exalted part of the group, right? So the proletariat were the workers of the world. And this is some Soviet art. The Soviet art's really interesting. Some of it's like kind of mind-blowing. So this is from 1968, and you can see that the men and women are working together. She's driving a tractor, and he's got the thresher in arm. They're meeting the needs of the state. So in the Soviet system, there's the inversion, where it is the worker and the efforts and the energy and the commitment of the worker to the state that are glamorized in a lot of ways. Let me show you another picture. So this is all Soviet-style propaganda art. Here we go. What do we see? We see the workers again. They're the ones that are being lionized. They're the ones that are being celebrated. And we have, these various kinds of stations of work. Somebody's knitting here. Somebody's carrying a fabric. Somebody's carrying something else here. The fabric is getting rolled out. The thing about the Soviet art is, in many cases, the faces are kind of detail-free in a lot of ways. Let me show you more. So here we go, very similar theme. Since it's kind of a slightly post-agrarian society, and this one is rife with symbolism. This is like Workers of the World Unite. We have the thresher, the scythe, which is the tool of Capricorn. We have, which looks like the hoe, and we have the woman with, again, a thresher or a hook. And everybody is celebrating. They're holding up the red flag. And down below, the spoils of riches are being overturned and trampled upon by the proletariat and the working class. Okay. These are all vestiges of a society that they're just trampling over. The hordes in their fervor and their zeal to create a new world. These things are meaningless to them. Absolutely meaningless. They're not meaningless to the people that ran the revolution. That's for damn sure. That is for damn sure. Because the revolution, the Russian Revolution, was run out of New York City. Oops. What about yesterday? If you don't know the story about the Russian Revolution, look it up, the Bolshevik Revolution. Study it. Study the playbook because it's happening right here, right now. Been talking about that for a while. Last couple of years. Let's see if we have any more Soviet-style art. We can show. I think I got one more picture here. And again, this is the celebration of the worker, the working class, the proletariat, fueling the fire of the revolution's engine on their effort, their emotion, and mostly their emotion. And here we go. We've got this giant hammer, And he's got them all back here, right? All these people back here on this hammer. And these are the people that are keeping him. They're keeping him from doing his work. Just look at that. You've got a guy in a suit, looks like a banker. You have people from other cultures. He may actually look like he might be Jewish, this guy. You know, there are all these people that are just, weighing down his hammer. And the hammer of progress, which is based on the brute force of his labor. So the bourgeoisie and the religious factions, because religion is the opiate of the masses, are basically keeping him from moving that hammer and hitting that anvil. And when this act occurs, when the hammer hits the anvil, it's an act of creation. And it's an affirmation for the future. It is the building block, or it is the hardware, or it is the girder and the beam for the future of a burgeoning society. And these forces are holding him back with their money bags, with their bourgeoisie expectations and lifestyle. So they must shake off these forces in society so the hammer can be smacked and smashed on the steel girder or the steel beam. You see that? So this is the propaganda that was very effective in mobilizing the workforce of the Soviet Union. And in some ways, we're starting to see that now. Now, that's not to take away from the few people that are still working. I mean, it's great, right? It's great. In theory and in reality, we should all still be working, whatever that is. Whatever that is. Now, I have a theory also that if we're going to go do this, let's do it all the way and never go back to work again, right? And just let the whole thing, completely and utterly dissolve, so that when they say, okay, you can come back and you can use your cards and go, whatever, it's like, just forget it, man. You guys messed this up. You messed this up. We're not going to do this. We're done. We're just done. We're done with the system. We're done with your system. You put us in our homes now. You put us in our 4x4, 4 walls, little holding cells, holding pens. Just screw you. We're not coming back. What do you mean? We're telling you to come back. We're not coming back. I've been talking about this for years now. I hate to say this, but it's true. It's true. My solution to change the world is to do nothing. Stay at home for about a month and a half, 2 months, stay at home, get enough food so you don't have to do anything, right? And do nothing. That was my plan. You want to change the system, you want to change the world, do nothing. Now it's forced. Now it's been forced on us. But they're controlling the narrative, right? So that said, I think people do need to get back. We got about 2.5 weeks before this thing just completely crashes, and we'll be at a point of no return. 2.5 weeks. And there's a lot that can happen. Things are moving very, very quickly, as you know. Very, very quickly. I would expect that, look, in LA, for instance, the mayor there is threatening to shut power and water off. I mean, are you fucking kidding me? I mean, the mayors and the governors have become the dictators of little banana republics now. Dictators of little banana republics. Now they have all this power because the governor has said, okay, well, these are the guidelines. And the mayor's going, oh, these are the guidelines? Well, let me just we take a few steps beyond those guidelines. You think the governor of the state's going to push back? We have it right here in Texas. The mayor of this city, who is one of the most incompetent people I've ever met, has had one case of gerrymandering and election fraud, and was found guilty, by the way. And for some reason, she got reelected mayor. That tells you a lot about the competition in this town. Like I said, I had a conversation where I just got to Fredericksburg. I had a conversation with the guy that was running for mayor. He couldn't have been less impressive. Like just not impressive at all. But he's, kind of called himself a conservative. What does that mean? Really? Conservative by label only. But we're seeing this now. We're seeing the glorification of the working class. And, they have to, in some ways, they're doing us a real service. And I don't mean to take anything away from that. Okay? But it is a very similar strategy to what happened in 1917 and 1918, basically from 1915 to 1918 in the former Soviet Union. It was the glorification of the proletariat, and it's a psychological operation. And then what happens after that, when the proletariat takes back their power, right, is that they institute a system where everybody gets kind of equal pay, or whatever that thing is. I was reading a very interesting account of somebody from the Ukraine, and back when the Ukraine was under Soviet rule, this guy's father worked 6 months out of the year in a coal mine, basically for free. Right? He worked 6 months out of the year in a coal mine for free. Why? Because it allowed him to keep his small little farm. All right. So there was kind of a deal. I'll work 6 months of backbreaking labor for free. And the days that he wasn't working, he was on the farm planting potatoes. And then they were taking those potatoes into the city so that they could sell them or trade them and somehow keep their standard of living. Think about that. This is the system that created so-called equality and so-called wealth distribution for all. So staying with the Ukraine, the amazing Polly has a new video out, which I think is really worth seeing. And essentially what she has done is she has linked Deborah Bricks, the woman who is the mother superior of the coronavirus, and she's linked her to the woman, Yovanovitch, the woman from the Ukraine that was involved in the impeachment hearing, in the impeachment charade for one Donald John Trump. And what Bricks was doing, now she was at that time an ambassador, okay? She was an ambassador, and she was funneling huge amounts of money to Ukraine for AIDS research. So what's really interesting about this coronavirus pandemic, theoretical, is that it's forcing us to look backwards at what happened during the AIDS, quote unquote, pandemic. But what was really going on? What was AIDS really about? And how much money was invested in AIDS research and AIDS funding, I would say probably way over $1 billion. That's my sense. Are we talking $1 trillion? I don't know. I don't have the exact figures, but a significant amount of money. Anybody know anybody that ever had AIDS and died from AIDS? Well, I do. I had a cousin that did, but you know what happened to him? He was part of the Hep C trial in San Francisco, where they directly inoculated him with what I believe was Lyme disease, Lyme. And then, of course, the cure was worse than the actual thing itself. And so you had this great fatality rate amongst a select group in a select population in New York, Los Angeles, and San Francisco. Remember when Magic Johnson was supposed to have HIV, and HIV was supposed to be, you know, a death sentence because it brought AIDS with it? Well, Magic Johnson is still alive. He's still alive. And I even wonder whether or not Magic Johnson even has HIV. Like, I know a lot about Magic Johnson, and you know what he did when he was on the LA Lakers. A lot of creepy stuff. Very, very creepy stuff. I don't want to get into it, but let's just say that Magic was very popular with the owner, Jerry Buss. But wouldn't that just absolutely like put the nail in the coffin with HIV? Would you have a famous sports figure die from it? Now, there was another guy by the name of Glenn Burke. And Glenn Burke was a baseball player for the Oakland A's. And he was a local product, grew up in Berkeley, and didn't know really a whole lot about him personally, but from what I gather, he was a really cool guy, and Glenn Burke was gay, and Glenn Burke theoretically was one of the HIV sufferers or victims. You have Rock Hudson, and who knows with these people, right? I mean, who knows? Rock Hudson, another celebrity. And I'm sure there are people that know people that had or died of AIDS or HIV, but again, I have to question, number one, the numbers. Number two, I have to question really what they had. Because what we're seeing now is we're seeing the guys in the white coats who basically, you know, put their hands over something and declare it whatever it is. And I saw this firsthand with my father when my father passed away. And I think what my father had was a fungal overgrowth on his liver. So he got sick in September of 2009, and by March of 2010, he was dead. And of course, he went to Kaiser Permanente. And right around that time, I was encountering a number of people through my client base and readings who had lost their fathers. And one of the common themes was that they were treated by Kaiser. So my father goes to Kaiser, and they said, well, you've got liver cancer. And my father is all freaked out, But he keeps going back for these tests. And then one test revealed that he had a necrotic growth on his liver. Meanwhile, he's turning yellow because he's jaundicing. And my experience from what little I know about that is that's caused by a fungal overgrowth. You know, when your nails are yellow and stuff like that, you have to use an antifungal to peel back or kill off the jaundice. So then they weren't convinced that he had cancer of the liver. So then they bring him in to check out his colon. They think, well, maybe he's flashing the cancer through the colon. Is he? So he had to do, drink the stuff and do the MRI, whatever it is. And then all of a sudden, the head of oncology steps in. And he just puts his foot down and says, you have cancer. But I have good news for you. There is a drug that you can take that could add at least 2 years to your life. the best day of my life. Best day of my life. I could get 2 years worth of living and really show my wife how much I love her and take in the sort of the last vestiges, the physical work. Thank you. That drug, probably the pill, the cancer pill, which is really just a highly concentrated, potent form of chemo, which you swallow, made my father violently ill. Not only did it make him violently ill, but his symptoms rapidly accelerated. Once he took a couple of those pills, it was like, those pills were like hemlock. His condition worsened. But of course, the man with the white coat deemed him to have cancer. That was it. It was probably around January of 2010. And then by March, it was gone. Not real happy. I was actually kind of pissed about the whole situation. But you know, again, I can't play God. You can't play God. My mother and father bought into the system. I asked them, let me in. I asked them repeatedly, let me get in and advocate for you. Let me talk to these people. And they were persistently not allowing me to do that. So it's on them. It's on them and on him. Sometimes you can't do anything. This is what we're up against, right? This is kind of the world that we're up against now. We have these so-called doctors, the so-called experts. Let me I found something here that I want to bring to your attention that is along these lines, because we're going to start to get dissenting opinions now about things. Let me show you the story. LA mayor to cut off water power of. Let me show you this. This is where this whole thing is going. The hammer is coming down in a big way. This is in Spain. Check this out. In Spain, you can't use your own backyard. Police make sure of it. The last days and weeks of the coronavirus epidemic give an interesting insight into the human psyche. Elementary liberties are all restricted all over the world, such as the freedom of movement of private property, and most people accept these restrictions without blinking as the state declares their indispensability. On Sunday, March 8th, a large World Women's Day demonstration against the alleged rule of the patriarchate was held. There were 120,000 participants. Members of the government took part in it, marching side by side. By the way, Women's Day is a Soviet day. It's a day that the Soviets instituted, and we still celebrate. Since Sunday, March 14th, a curfew has been in place. All right. Just one day later, it was announced that starting on Wednesday, March 11th, kindergartens, schools, University of Madrid will be closed. Since Sunday, March 14th, a curfew has been in place, which is enforced by police and military force. Cyclists and joggers trying to keep fit in fresh air have been fined heavily. Spaniards are no longer even allowed to be in the private gardens of apartment blocks, even if families take turns using them. In short, we are no longer allowed to use our own gardens. They've been temporarily expropriated. Most people are a little bothered by the fact that the state is violating their freedom massively. They regard it as necessary and good. They do not question the state's authority to restrict our freedom at all. Rather, they denounce those who want to move freely and make use of their property rights. When two brothers were seen playing soccer in the garden of the acquaintance's apartment block, the police were called. So this is another thing that this so-called pandemic is going to birth, is the snitch culture. the snitch culture, because there are people who believe that if they're going to have to sacrifice their rights, that for the so-called common good of all, right? The greater good. Remember, I've been talking about the greater good. That that if somebody else is outside exercising their so-called rights or having fun or do the things that they supposedly are self-sacrificing for, what are they going to do? They're going to call the cops. So the snitch culture is going to rise proportionately. So what happens when we have a snitch culture in place? Trust erodes massively. And Glenn Streeter was sharing this with me the other day. He says we've moved from a high trust society to a low trust society. Very, very low trust in our quote unquote politicians and administrators, to low trust even amongst our fellow humans. Right? It's the rise of little brother. People denounce plain children who are regarded as harmful to public health for the poster saying stay at home. This is a block warden mentality. Most worrying thing is the high number of willing state collaborators. The parallels with the past are unnoticed. No one seems to care. It is not even discussed. If people are just scared enough, they entrust themselves to a temporary dictatorship without grumbling. They give up their freedom in the hope of being saved by state leaders, advised by wise experts. Fear makes people controllable. Instead of protesting against the violation of property rights, they clap their hands every day at 8 p.m. in Spain. Initially, the applause was mainly to show support for doctors and nurses, the proletariat, right? The new proletariat. But in the meantime, cheers to the police have been mixed in. The state leaders plan the violation of liberty centrally. They do not have the necessary information to give a rational answer to the corona crisis. They take into account the benefits of the curfew and the economic shutdown, but not the costs, because these are not quantifiable. One of the immediate costs is the loss of a more rapid immunization of the population. There are other health costs. Being confined to one's own four walls with a corresponding lack of physical exercise will lead to increased cardiovascular diseases, high blood pressure, strokes, and thromboses, among other things. The psychological burden of being locked up is especially immense. The psychological strain will cause some marriages and families to break up. Trauma and depression will be created. The economic collapse triggered by the political reaction to the coronavirus has its own health costs, such as entrepreneurs who suffer heart attacks and unemployed people who fall into depression or alcohol. And there are the economic costs in the narrow sense. The standard of living will fall, perhaps considerably. That depends on how long economic life remains switched off. Sooner or later, supply chains will be threatened, even for essential medicines and food. Already today, the range of products in Spanish supermarkets is reduced. This too can shorten lives. Worldwide, a decline in the standard of living will hit especially the poorest of the poor, whose supply of food and medicines will be greatly diminished. As the costs and benefits are not quantifiable, it is hubris to rely on central planning to address the COVID-19 epidemic and come to the decision to paralyze an entire country, even entire continents, not to mention the temporary disappearance of freedom. Unfortunately, frightened people seem to shed few tears for freedom. Absolutely and utterly true. That's what's happening. That's what's happening. It's in Spain. Italy, Spain, Europe, lockdown. How long will it take? We're already kind of here in this country. We're very, very close. I think we're at probably stage 3. We're at stage 3 right now. Stage 4, I think, is just complete and utter lockdown. Like, I'm watching people walk up and down the street, ride their bike. It's great. People are going out, they're getting exercise, they're getting fresh air, the sun is out. They should be. But how long will this be allowed to take place? Yesterday, I was down by the Guadalupe River, and Kerrville's got a really, really nice park. And there's a series of fountains that are coming up out of the ground. It's giant streams of water. And there were kids, there were about 4 or 5 kids in there dancing around, playing like the little sprites in the water. And it made my heart feel good. It was like a scene from another time. And, it's a seed of hope in many ways. Anyways, There's another thing I wanted to share with you guys today. It's kind of interesting. Let me see if I can find this bit of information. Give me a second here. Oh, breaking. Amazon workers at 6 U.S. warehouses test positive for coronavirus. Great. Oh, Prince Charles has coronavirus, which we talked about. Another celebrity. Let's see. What else do we have? Iceland. Patient infected with 2 strains of COVID-19. Interesting. Very interesting. Let me see if I can find this in New York. Let me see. Where is this thing? Man, there's so much high strains. There's like the Kennedy kids singing Timber. Have you guys seen this thing? I mean, so many, there's just so many pieces here. Like every day, every hour, there's like new shit. Trump, checks will be in the mail April 6th. Let's see this thing. Let me see. We got 2.5 weeks. Right now, 2.5 weeks. If this thing is not resolved in 2.5 weeks, the repercussions are going to be devastating. Absolutely devastating. All right, I'm just trying to find this this tweet with the Kennedy kids. It's so bizarre. Like every day, there's more high strange in this whole thing. Oh, it got taken down now. Oh, interesting. They were singing Timber. Kennedy kids were singing Timber. And something having to do with Timberwolf, who was supposedly assassin of JFK. And possibly RFK too. Anyway, let me check in with you guys. Let's see what's happening. I was looking for a post about, let me go back, about New York City. It was really interesting. This is a guy that travels around New York. And apparently there's nothing happening. I'm just going to read this. This guy says, I live in New York. I travel all over New York. Nothing is happening. I haven't seen one case, just telling people to shelter. The news is so overblown and lie. Hospitals here reporting locally that they have all needed supplies, and national news says no supplies in New York. It's all bullshit. People are outside playing, enjoying the weather, all that shit. Yet the media continues to lie. It was like that here in Pennsylvania on Monday. Today, there are more people out and a hell of a lot more cars. It's all scare tactics. People are onto this, right? Right, but why? Same here. I haven't seen one sick person, no one waiting in our hospitals in a highly populated area. So what gives? County next to me went into lockdown tonight. I have from a reliable source. We're going to by the end of the week. So they just keep driving this thing without any real, so when is the tsunami of coronavirus victims and fatalities going to reach Wuhan-like status? When is that going to happen? When is that going to happen? Because if it doesn't happen at some point fairly soon, the people are going to wake up and they're going to lose their shit, okay? They're going to lose their shit. Let's see if I can find this. And I'm just wondering how long they're going to keep the internet on. I mean, they're making it extremely difficult for me to even do my show, and I'm clearly not very popular at all. There are a lot of people with much higher profiles than me. There's these experts, the so-called experts. On this thing. I'm gonna see if I can find it tomorrow, and I'm gonna bring down the show. Let's see. I'll find it tomorrow. Let me get in with you guys in chat. Let's see where you're at. Let's see what's going on here. China has already de-escalated. Everything is going back to normal there. Absolutely. One good Kennedy, RFK Jr. doing great work with vaccine games. Absolutely. Best friend of Mount Sinai with fluid and lungs. I'm sure it happens. Also, the blood types matter. Unfortunately, very real. Well, it depends on what you call very real. What's very real? Is it very real the fact that we're looking at a fucking planetary extinction? Or do people get sick? Do people get pneumonia? Yeah, they do, okay? They do. Absolutely. You know, is this thing, you know, kind of real? Yeah, it's kind of real. But on another level, it's not kind of real. So you're going to shut down the whole fucking planet? You know, is that the best strategy? You know, give me a break. Just give me a break. I think they planned. You think they planned it? What is real? CMVR 47. Define real. What is real? Define it. What is real? What is real? Define it. Define what real is. Tell me what real is. You're in the chat room. Tell me what real is. What level of it is? I'm not a coronavirus denier. Yeah, it is real. But is it global fatality real? Is it real enough to just shut everything down and wipe out a number of our so-called freedoms, which were hanging by a thread anyway as a result of it? What you believe is real. Absolutely. An actual pathogen with many sufferers, however used by the powers that be. It's, well, you know, there are a lot of pathogens out there. You ever hear of Lyme disease? You ever hear of Lyme disease? You ever hear of Epstein-Barr? You ever hear of all these other pathogens which they have denied, categorically denied for years? For years. The medical industry would not even recognize or do blood panels for Lyme. And it's only now and recently and begrudgingly that they have and do. And it's a lot more fucking real than COVID-19 is, okay? So let's define the meaning of real and what represents real in the so-called world of pandemics and virology. I mean, come on, let's go. You know, let's have a bigger discussion about the whole thing. I mean, yeah, it's happening. And yeah, people are getting sick. They are getting sick. But it's not cause to shut down the entire planet and use it as a result to be able to wipe out our last remaining vestiges of freedom and turn this whole thing into an Orwellian police state, which is what we're now staring down, okay? We're going to deploy drones in Los Angeles to make sure that you're following orders. Can you wrap your head around that now? They're going to deploy drones in LA to basically track you. It's right out of They Live. That They Live was one of the first movies where those little drones were shown following Roddy Piper around. So, you know, I like to leave the show on a positive note. So I'm going to do my best to leave the show on a positive note. And it does have to do with the fact that your consciousness and your mind and your heart and your spirit, well, they're the front lines They're the front lines of your spiritual immunity. They're the front lines of your connection to the Logos. And again, and I've been preaching this now for months, that you have to be the shepherd. You have to be the shepherd of those qualities and those experiences and those very, very important things in your life. And you have to hold on to them dearly in a time where the world is contracting and getting smaller. And the gravity of space is encroaching upon us in ever tighter vice-like proportions, okay? So it's even more important now that you exercise your sovereign right as a human, as a spiritual being having human experience. You have to exercise your sovereign right in that way, whatever that way is for you. Whatever that way is. Whether it's to tell somebody that you love them, to be caring, to be supportive, to be good to your body, to get out and exercise even amidst the ever increasing constraints that are being placed upon us. In essence, keep your spirit alive. This is the most important thing you can do. Keep it alive. Keep the flame of your spirit burning. I'll do my part. I'll be here every day, sharing with you whatever information crosses my path. I almost have too much to share. So, but I'll be here every day, 8:45, like I said I would. And that's my commitment to you. Friday, I'm going to have Stefan Verstappen and Ursilia Pompilio, and it's going to be great. Ursilia is a really, really high quality, high consciousness nurse who's going to give us some great information. And then Stefan is an advocate of spiritual community, which is, something that, we've all been kind of working on here as sort of a virtual and real experiment. At least that's how it's evolved. So look forward to Friday's show. I've got more things coming down the pipeline. Next Friday, I'm going to have my friend Richard Grossinger, who is an acclaimed author and I think one of the great minds of the 20th century. He's got his, I think, probably his final book, although you never know, Bottoming Out the Universe. He'll be with me next Friday. And a follower of the show, very talented woman by the name of Hope Easton, will join us and give us a musical interlude next Friday. She's a tremendous cello player and singer, very, very talented person. So again, we're here to help you, inform you and give you spiritual food and artistic food and creative food, any chance we get. Okay? All right, so Chatlandia, I love you. Everybody else, even though I don't know you, from my heart to yours, stay open, stay free, stay in the light, sunlight, and use your head to discern what's real, your heart to say what's possible. And I'll be back tomorrow at 8:45 Central Standard Time. Thank you.